What is up, guys? Kaos here, and today we are going to be taking a look at all of the different Arc exotic primary weapons in Destiny and ranking them so that we can see the best and the worst that this group of guns has to offer, so that you guys know which weapons to utilize when you're doing a playlist featuring Arc Burn. And this week, the Heroic Siva Strikes did have Arc Burn, so all of the background gameplay, you are seeing these weapons in their element. Literally. So let's take a look at all of the different weapons we're going to be going over. Now firstly, before getting on to all of the raid weapons, we have the Zhalo Supercell Exotic Auto Rifle. This is just a normal exotic weapon that you can loot from a variety of different sources. This weapon belongs to the medium rate of fire auto rifle archetype. Now moving on to the Crota's End raid weapons. Firstly, with the main one being the Necrochasm. This belongs to the fastest firing auto rifle archetype. After that, we have the Fang of Ear Scout Rifle, belonging to the medium rate of fire archetype. After that, we have the Oversoul Edict, which belongs to the fastest firing pulse rifle archetype. Now, moving on to the Vault of Glass weapons, firstly, we have the Praedyth Timepiece. This also belongs to the fastest firing pulse rifle archetype. After that, we have the Fatebringer. This is a medium rate of fire hand cannon archetype. After that, we have the King's Fall raid weapons with the Anguish of Drystan, which is a high damage auto rifle. And moving on from there, we have the Wrath of the Machine, which features the Kaos DOGMA Scout Rifle. This belongs to the highest damaging archetype of scout rifles. So let's start out here with number 8, the worst exotic Arc primary weapon in Destiny. And it's gotta be, by a huge margin, the Anguish of Drystan auto rifle. I hate this gun. I loathe this gun, but every time I say I do, for some reason, the Anguish fan club shows up in the comments. Like, I don't know why they just hang around my channel, because anyone who's tested this weapon, Holtzman, SkillUp, anyone with a channel has said it's terrible, and it really is just a terrible, terrible weapon. Here's exactly why. Firstly, the recoil is alarming. If you use this weapon and then use literally any other auto rifle that belongs to this same archetype, like a Shadow Price, or a Suros ARI-45, or a Zero Day Dilemma, or just a Continental, or any other auto rifle in this archetype, this weapon has so much more recoil. It honestly feels like it's glitched, that someone at Bungie entered the wrong number. But even if you do get used to the tremendously terrible recoil, you have a weapon that doesn't do any more damage than other weapons in the same archetype. Like, it doesn't do extra damage compared to those weapons, except for the fact that it is obviously Arc. It doesn't have good range. In fact, it has one of the worst ranges of all of the auto rifles in that archetype. Seriously, one of the worst ranges. It doesn't reload particularly fast. It doesn't even have a super high magazine. You would have to get used to the terrible recoil of this gun just to end up with a subpar auto rifle. So, what's the point? Like, what's the point of getting used to the recoil if there's no benefit on the other side? Again, people swear by it, and I guess if you absolutely love this weapon, you do you, go for it. But, in my recommendations, looking into the stats, playing this game non-stop, there is no way I would recommend this gun. It is, in my opinion, the absolute worst exotic Arc primary weapon. So, let's move on to the better weapons. This is like way far down, and then you move way onto the other end of the spectrum, and then 7 to 1 are all much closer together. With number 7, I think, being the Oversoul Edict. Now, this to me, I actually ended up changing my mind with this being number 7, and then something else we'll go over being number 6, but this is a fully automatic pulse rifle with pretty good overall stats. But it just doesn't have that factor that makes it a good PvE weapon. It doesn't have anything like Firefly, explosive rounds, anything at all to spread around its damage. And it actually does have a somewhat severe recoil pattern. If you are shooting this gun fully automatic at medium range, you're going to be missing a decent amount. No, it's not terrible and it's not unusable, I'm definitely not saying that, but in a game like Destiny, where landing your headshots is so important because they do so much damage, weapons that have a decent amount of recoil, you know, they tend not to be that amazing because every burst, if you're missing a headshot, your DPS is going pretty far down, and if you're getting body head as well, that's not great either. So you want those more accurate weapons usually. And aside from full auto, this weapon's perks aren't that great either. The last perk slot is dedicated to Darkbreaker, which makes your bullets go through Hive Knight shields, which is useful in very narrow scenarios. Even something like the Anguish of Drystan has crowd control, which is universally going to be more useful and better than Darkbreaker. So just not amazing perks, okay stats. Overall, it's still a good weapon, but it just doesn't have anything that pushes it into that PvE god roll or god weapon direction. Now, speaking of a more accurate weapon, let's actually move on to number 6, which is the Praedyth's Timepiece. This pulse rifle belongs to the exact same damage archetype as the Oversoul Edict. They are in direct competition with one another. But I do feel like after using these weapons, both of them for quite a bit, that the Praedyth's Timepiece is just a little bit better. It has that huge leg up for stability, making it so much easier to land an entire burst to the head. And even if you don't, the Timepiece does have Head Seeker, which is going to increase your headshot damage if you get a couple of body shots. So it's just so much easier to take down enemies, in my opinion, with the Timepiece. You just get every single burst landing exactly on their mark and just getting headshots after headshots after headshots. Yes, the Oversoul Edict does have a little bit better range, and I think that full auto is a lot better, you know, than Secret Round. I haven't even leveled that perk up because I think it's so bad, but I do feel that that bonus to accuracy does edge the Praedyth's Timepiece a little bit ahead of the Oversoul Edict. These weapons, again, are in pretty direct competition, and they're very, very close. They are pretty interchangeable. But both of them are kind of down here near the bottom because they aren't that amazing, again, at spreading their damage around. Nothing like Firefly, nothing like explosive rounds, and they don't have anything fantastic against bosses either. They're really just kind of decent pulse rifles that have been made into Arc Exotics. Now, moving on with number 5, we have the Fang of Ute Scout Rifle. This weapon is just a solid little scout rifle. It's got decent range. In fact, it's got more than decent. It's got good range. It's got good stability. It's got a decent magazine size, decent reload. Nothing is really wrong with this weapon. It is overall like a solid scout rifle that has arc damage. And a scout rifle, I think, is going to slightly edge out something like a pulse rifle when we're talking about PvE usability. There's a lot of situations in PvE where you want to stick back, where you don't want to be in the fray, especially, you know, if it is Arc Burn, that means the enemies are going to be doing arc damage too. You do not want to be running into a group of taken Centurions. That is a terrible idea. You want to be as far back as possible, and a scout rifle is really going to help you excel in those situations. It's also no joke when you need to damage a boss. Scout rifle, DPS at range, at a boss, if you're getting headshot after headshot after headshot, that's gonna, you know, probably out DPS something like a pulse rifle, especially the ones we just saw with pretty low ranges. So that's why the Fang of Ute slots in at number 5. However, moving on to number 4, we have yet another scout rifle with the Kaos DOGMA. Now, this was at number 4 and actually moved it up to number 3, and then I thought about it, then moved it back down. These weapons are all actually pretty close to one another. If you're using, like, again, anything within the top 7, you're not really doing anything wrong. But I feel that the Kaos slots in pretty good at number 4 because, firstly, it's a high damaging scout rifle, which means it's going to one-shot kill a lot of enemies with a headshot. However, it's bad against normal tier adds because it doesn't have anything to spread around the damage. If this had explosive rounds, it would be absurdly good. Like, it would be arguably number one, but it doesn't, and that's a huge drawback on all of these type of weapons and all of the slow shooting guns in Destiny. When we're talking about hand cannons, when we're talking about scout rifles, you want something like explosive rounds, something like Firefly to let you spread around your damage, and this gun is sorely lacking that. However, what it does have is phenomenal boss DPS. The combination of triple tap and then the triple double perk makes it so that you can shoot at a boss and just keep shooting. And this is really nice because it opens up a lot of possibilities for other loadouts you may want to run. Like normally you would probably want to run an arc sniper rifle so that you could deal with the boss at the end of, whatever encounter you're likely playing, whether it's the Nightfall, whether it's Strikes, whether it's even the Prison of Elders. But if you're using the Chaos Dogma, that can be your boss DPS weapon, and then you can run a shotgun or a fusion rifle, or heck, even something like a sidearm to deal with those close range enemies. It just lets you be a little bit more free in what you want to actually choose for your loadout, and that is definitely a very big upside. However, this weapon specifically, again, it's good against bosses, it's decent against normal tier adds, but it just doesn't have that ability to spread around damage. That's why it's number 4. Moving on to number 3, we have the Necrochasm. This, unlike the Chaos Dogma, is the ultimate at spreading around damage. Like, holy crap. Firstly, this weapon is probably the most fun gun to use on this list. The exotic ability causes a Curse Thrall explosion whenever you kill an enemy. So it's basically an easier to trigger Firefly. So if there's a group of Thralls charging at you and you kill just one of them, that could end up killing, basically all of them. Normally you're just going to see a group of enemies, whether it be Dregs or Acolytes or Thralls or whatever. Just start shooting, kill a couple, and in the Thrall explosions, kill the rest. The amount of primary rampages you go on with this gun if you're playing Strikes is crazy. It is so damn effective at taking down those groups of adds. Like taking Scions, no problem. Now, it does definitely suffer from the downside of not being the best against bosses. It's actually not bad because it pumps out so much damage. It's a fast-firing auto rifle in the end of the day, so it's not going to be absolutely terrible, but it's not great at long ranges. It's okay at medium ranges, it's okay at damaging bosses, but it really just excels in wiping the face of the earth with dead bodies of adds. Like, it just really is good at that, and that's why it slots into number 3. Now, moving on from there, we have number 2, and I think a lot of you guys won't be expecting this because it's the Fatebringer. And again, I think a lot of you guys expected this to be at number 1, but seriously, number 2, Fatebringer. Now, number 2 is very, very high, and the reason the Fatebringer gets so high is because it is an excellent weapon, and the Arc version is just phenomenal. So you have explosive rounds. I've talked the whole video about how good explosive rounds is. The Fatebringer has it, and it has Firefly, and it has Outlaw. It just has it all, and it has good stats. It just has it all. The Fatebringer is so good at damaging those multiple enemies. Like with just a few shots, like 3 shots into a group of 5 Acolytes, you've killed all of the 5 Acolytes, like easily, sometimes even less. Again, the primary rampages are popping off. This thing is better at dealing with groups of adds than the Necrochasm, and the reason being is because it deals with multiple enemies in the initial stages of your engagement and at the end. And what I mean by that is explosive rounds, one shot is going to damage and flinch like 3 enemies at a single time, and then after you've killed that enemy, you have Firefly to even further flinch and damage the enemies nearby. Against higher tier enemies, it's decent as well. It's a high damaging hand cannon, so with only a few shots, you can take out captains and so on. It's definitely not great against bosses, however, it is just a normal hand cannon when it comes to DPSing a boss. And so that's why, if you do want to run something like a shotgun, like a fusion rifle, you may seriously want to consider using the Chaos Dogma over the Fatebringer if you do have both. But against adds, which is mostly what you're dealing with in PvE, it's the thing you want to kill as fast as possible in Arc Burn playlists, the Fatebringer is phenomenal. But we do have number 1, which is, by power of deduction, I'm sure you guys have figured out, the Zhalo Supercell. Now, am I seriously saying that the Zhalo Supercell is better than the Fatebringer? Well, I want to remind you guys of how we're ranking these. We're not ranking these on which one is the better raid weapon, because in that case, it's going to be the legendary Fatebringer. We're ranking these on weapons you want to use in Arc Burn playlists, and in those, you can't get Arc Burn in the raid, so you don't have to worry about that. But for those scenarios where you're willing to give up your exotic to a primary, right, the Zhalo Supercell, I think, is better than a Fatebringer if you're running strikes or the Nightfall or whatever with Arc Burn. And here's why. The Zhalo was designed to be an exotic to begin with. The Fatebringer is a fantastic, fantastic weapon, but it really is just the God Roll legendary hand cannon that has been turned into an arc weapon. Again, the Zhalo was meant to be an exotic weapon, and it has so many benefits because of that. Firstly, instead of having explosive rounds, it has the ability that if you shoot an enemy, the arc damage will chain in between enemies, which is almost a better explosive rounds. Like, the amount of enemies you damage, you flinch, and you can kill at the same time when shooting a group with the Zhalo is absurd. Like, if you see 5 acolytes, you start shooting 1, it's chaining to the rest 4. Like, it's such a powerful ability. So the Zhalo has that covered. It spreads its damage around. Already phenomenal gun against adds. But it goes even further. The main reason the Zhalo is not number 1 is because, firstly, if you're getting double kills, which, if you're using this gun in an Arc Burn playlist, like, double kills are flying at you. Like, it is so easy to get those. If you are getting those, you are reloading your magazine. You can literally shoot this gun for over a minute straight without having to release a trigger. There's actually videos of people in patrol mode when the enemies move against each other who just aim this gun down where they're spawning and shoot and never stop for minutes at a time. They shoot hundreds of rounds without ever releasing the trigger. That is an insanely powerful ability that this weapon has. But most importantly, when you get those double kills, it also grants you bonus super energy. This should not be overstated on how good that is, because no matter how good an arc weapon is, using Storm Trance when it's Arc Burn is so much better. No matter how good your primary weapon is, your super is going to be probably better. And so getting your super much more often with this weapon is just an unbelievably powerful ability. So you have a weapon that's phenomenally powerful against adds. Like, it spreads around its damage, no problem. And it also gets all of these sweet exotic abilities because it was designed to be an exotic in the first place. And that's why, for the best arc primary weapon, I would say it's the one you've been using all along. It is the Zhalo Supercell. Now, don't get me wrong, all these other weapons are still quite powerful, except for the Anguish, screw that gun. But the Fatebringer is still very, very powerful. So is the Chaos Dogma, so is the Necrochasm. But again, I do feel like if you're running through a strike, if you're running through a Nightfall, having that Zhalo, getting your super so much more often is so, so powerful. And so guys, that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed and found this interesting. Now, if you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny and upcoming Destiny 2 content, be sure to slap that subscribe button. Now, if you guys want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus. That's linked in the description down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can also follow. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.